Hey guys, we are starting lesson 4 in the Illustrator book today. This is the end result of what it's going to look like, what we're working with today. Here's what it's going to start with, and if you notice a lot of these things that are over here in the end, we're going to move them and work with them over in this spot. You'll want to go into the V drive, and I can't access the V drive because I'm at home, but you're going to end up going into the V drive under ME2 folder, look at Illustrator lessons, look in the lesson 4 folder, and you have two options in there. One is start and end. End is just this, it's just so you can see what it's going to look like. You don't have to open that up if you don't want to. I'm going to go ahead and close mine out, and you guys want to open up the start. Okay, in this lesson, you're going to learn how to use the scissors tool, how to use the knife tool, how to join paths, how to outline strokes. You're going to work with the eraser tool, shape building tool, pathfinder commands. You're going to work with creating a compound path, how to use the reshape tool, and you're going to edit strokes with the width tool. So all of that's in lesson 4. I'm going to break it apart into probably 2 or 3 tutorials for you guys. Okay, first thing we're going to do is to go ahead and rename this. So go to File, Save As, and we're going to call it Happy Camper and your last name. And then you can go ahead and save it inside your class folder and so that you can find it as we work on it throughout the week. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just save this real quick on my desktop. All right, and here we go. Next thing we want to do, as usual, is to reset your workspace just to make sure if anything's changed. So go to Window, Workspace, Essentials, and we're going to click Essentials so it's on there. Mine's taking a little bit to load, and I'm going to go back. Here it goes. It's really slow. I don't know if it's because I'm home or what it is. I'm going to go back and just go to Reset Essentials. Okay, that should have everything looking the same as what we're used to. I'm thinking this is a little too wide for me. I'm going to drag it over. I don't need all this space, so I'm going to move this out of the way a little bit. Okay, so we're working with this right here today, and what it is we're making a postcard. So we're going to start working with a couple of these paths and shapes, and the first one that we're going to get into is how to cut with a scissors tool. All right, for this one, we want to check that our smart guides are on. So we're going to go to View, and it is checked that smart guides are on. If yours is not checked, go ahead and check it. Remember, smart guides are awesome. They just help you align things. They tell you where center points are, and they give you all these little clues. If it ever gets on your nerves, so you can see when I move my mouse around, smart guides, I'll show you. See, that's those lines that appear. If that ever gets on your nerves, you can just click it to get off of it, and then nothing happens. But I always like to have them on for the most part. All right, so we're going to work with the scissors tool. We want to go ahead and select the artboard number 2. So we're going to choose the window. Here we go. And we're going to work with this illustration. All right, we're going to choose our selection tool. I'm already on it. Remember, the shortcut is V on your keyboard. And we're going to select this shape right here. We want to zoom in a little bit, so you can either choose the magnifying glass or my favorite, which is Control Plus. And then I just shift over a little bit. Well, maybe not as gracefully as I should. Okay, there we go. And we've got that zoomed in, and that way that'll just help us while we're working. If you noticed, if I zoom out for a minute, this is what we're starting with. And this is the final product over here. So we're going to end with something that looks like this. This time I'm going to use the magnifying glass so you guys can see. The benefit of the magnifying glass is when you click on it, it zooms right into that point that you clicked on. Okay, so you should have your white shape selected. We are going to select the scissors tool, and it is hidden underneath the eraser, so you can either press and hold or right click and choose scissors tool. And we're going to cut a path. Remember, a path is, these are the anchor points in the corner. The path is a line that goes in between those. So when your smart guides tell you that you reach a path, right about in this area, you're going to go ahead and use your scissors tool and click and cut it, and then move away. All right, you want the direct select tool, which is shortcut A, and this little blue anchor point arrived because we cut it with a scissors. So with the direct select tool, we can actually select this anchor point and we can click and drag it up. We want to get it to right about here and go ahead and let go. And you can see that it's now moved that path up. Now we have this other section over here on this path, and we're going to click and drag that one up on this side. Just about there. Okay, that looks pretty good. You guys will notice that the black stroke doesn't go all the way around the shape, and there's a reason for that. When you use the scissor tools and you cut it, where we did right there, it now is an open path instead of a closed path, which means that it stops where it was cut. And in order for this to have a stroke to go all the way around, this would have to be a closed path. So what we're going to do next is to go ahead and close this off so that the stroke goes all the way around. And that is called joining paths. That's what we're going to work with next. All right, we're going to work with the selection tool. So shortcut V on your keyboard, or you could go ahead and click it up here. And we're going to click over here just to deselect for a minute, and we're going to come back and click in this white shape. And what we want to do is to join paths so that it gives the stroke go all the way around. You had to select over here instead of over here because before we just had this part selected and it would give you an error message if you were to try to do it. So what we want to do now is go to Object, Path, and Join. Okay, it's now joined those paths together. An Illustrator looks for the paths that are open-ended, and then it takes those two and applies it together. In the Properties panel, we want to go to Window, and Property. I always do this. If I forget to cut this out of the video, ignore what I just said about the properties and going to Windows. We're going to take and reduce our stroke to 0. So we want to go down to 0. You can click it like that, or you can just select it from here. And the next thing that we want to do is to make sure that our fill is in white. So it is. We're going to go up here and we're going to click the swatch option, and we want the one that's called purple 3. So if you hover, it tells you which one it is. So there's purple 3. I'm going to go ahead and click it. Sorry guys, I have to select that shape first. Somehow I became deselected from it, so I need to make sure that's selected. I'm going to take my stroke down to 0, and then I want to click on here and choose purple 3. Okay, good. All right, we are going to drag across all of this. We're going to do Object, Group. Then we want to do Select, Deselect, and go ahead and save it. And I'm just going to do Save As just to make sure that it's saved the right way, which it is. I'm paranoid about that. I always double check it and then hit. Do you want to replace it? Yes, I want to replace it. Okay. All right, so besides the scissors, another way to use or to cut is the knife tool. If you press and hold on the scissors, you can choose knife, which is down here. We want to choose artboard number 3, so you can either hit the arrow over to number 3, or you can click this down arrow and select number 3. And we're going to work with the knife tool. Okay, so this is what our final is going to look like. This is where we're starting. I'm going to go ahead and just zoom into this a little bit so that I can see it clearer. We're going to go to the selection tool and make sure that this shape is selected. If you don't have this selected first and you choose the knife first, it will cut everything it sees. If you have it selected, it'll only cut what you have selected first. So we're choosing the knife tool, and what we're going to do is going from left to right, we're just going to drag right across the shape to cut it kind of in this area right here. I'm actually going to undo that because it needs to be, I'm looking at the book as I'm talking to you, so I'm a little bit slower. I'm going to cut across just a little bit lower. So I did Control Z for that. And you have to use, look at where the arrow is, that's where it's going to cut, not where the knife tool is. So it's a little tricky when you look at it at first. So you have to picture right where that arrow is, it's where it's going to cut. And we kind of want it to go right like that. All right, what I want you to notice is when you use the knife tool, it's not very straight, it's kind of uneven, and it'll give you a little bit of a jagged look. What we want to do is, I'm going to click over here for a minute. I'm going to click this top shape with a selection tool. And I want to choose the swatch called pink right there. We're going to go ahead and take this small red square and drag it down on top of these two shapes, just like this. I'm going to bump it down just a little bit more. And we're going to go ahead and drag a marquee across all three, and we're going to do object and group. All right, guys, good job. I'm going to go ahead and zoom out so you can see that we look pretty close to the final. My line kind of goes different. I wasn't looking at that when I did it, so mine goes a little bit different than that, but that's pretty good. The next thing that we're going to do is, so you saw how to use the knife tool and it gives you like an uneven jagged line. Now I'm going to show you how to do a straight line with the knife tool. All right, so we're going to work with number 4, so you can just choose the arrow key over here to go to number 4. I want to zoom in just a little bit more so that I can see it better, and I do want you to look. This is how we're going to end it. This is what it looks like, so we're going to end up slicing and then changing the color of this to make this look a little different. So let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit. And just going to center that up. Okay, and we want to use the knife tool to cut straight paths instead of crooked paths. So I just want to do View, Fit, Artboard and Window, just to kind of get, I just want to go back just for a minute for a second. We want to select the pink triangle underneath the artwork that's called Stop. So right here, this triangle is what we want to select. So go to your selection tool, V on the keyboard, and we want to click on this right here. Sorry, I meant this one right here. I told you the wrong one, so we're going to go there. I want to zoom in. Another option, instead of doing Control Plus or to use the magnifying glass, is to go to View, and you can do zoom in this way. So I think this takes a little bit longer, but it's good for you guys to know all your options as to how you can do things when you're working in Illustrator. All right, we're going to select the knife tool, which we have. We just need to click on it. And notice that we already previously selected this triangle, so it's lit up in blue. And what we're going to do is to position the pointer just above the top of the tent, or the points of the triangle, and we're going to press the caps lock key to turn the knife tool into a precise cutter. So if you hold down the caps lock key, it gives you this symbol right here, and it makes it so that it'll become a straight line. And so you have these little crosshairs, and it'll help you when you're going to cut to show you exactly what you want to do. So we want to hold down Alt and Shift, and we're going to drag down. So hold down Alt and Shift at the same time, Alt and Shift, and we're going to drag straight down from the top of this to the bottom. And it is a pretty perfect line. Go ahead and release. All right, we need to make one more cut. So instead of holding Shift this time, we're just going to hold Alt, and we're going to draw a little bit of an angle. We're going to cut this triangle in two right here. So we're going to start at the top holding the Alt key, and we're going to go ahead and drag right about like that just to create one more line. Okay, do that. You want to go ahead and do Select, Deselect, or Shift Control A. And we're going to use the selection tool to pick out the middle triangle shape, which is this one right here. And we want to fill this with a color called yellow in here. It's the one called yellow. So if you click up here and you hover, it's that one right there. We're going to go ahead and drag that, and then we're going to group all of this together. So I'm going to take my selection tool, and I'm going to go ahead and drag a marquee across everything. Whoops, I think I left out that one side. Let me do that bigger. And Object Group or Control G. Okay. And we want to go ahead and turn the caps lock off. You guys are doing great. Why don't you go ahead and click Save, just, as a precaution to make sure everything's saved. And we're going to work on number 5. So you can hit the arrow over for number 5. This is the final of what we're going to look like, and this is where we're starting from. So we're working with a plant in this one, and we're going to work with outlining strokes. So past, like a line, can show a stroke color, but not a fill color. If you create a line in Illustrator and you want to apply both a stroke and a fill to it, you can outline the stroke of a path. It converts it to a closed shape. We did that in one of the other lessons. I'm trying to think which one we used it for. I think it was the sailboat, one of the last ones that we did. We outlined a stroke and it looked like this. So it's a little confusing the first time you do it, but the more you do it, you'll get a hang of it. So if you want to just draw a quick line and then outline it so it becomes a shape, you can do that by following the next couple steps. So we're going to do View, Fit, Artboard and Window, or Control-0 does that as well. All right, choose your selection tool, and we're going to click this rectangle right here underneath Start. Now you can tell that this is actually a path and not a shape because you can see that it's just one line. It doesn't go all the way around like an enclosed shape. And the stroke point is all the way up to 20. So we want to actually take this and make it a shape in order that we can mess around with combining these shapes to work it into the plant. So what we need to do is to choose Object, Path, Outline, Stroke. So we're going to go to Object, Path, Outline, Stroke. And now it's turned from being a path with a single line to a complete shape. So now it's a rectangle, almost as if you drew the rectangle in the first place. And it fills it in as it was before, and it's complete. So we're going to drag the shape into position just like we see on the final. We're going to drag it down, and then we're going to erase part of it. So I'm going to drag it all the way down to the bottom, right like that. And then we're going to erase part of this to make it look like what we see in the final over here. So the next thing you want to do is to grab the eraser tool, which, if you remember, is right where the knife is. If you right click, we're going to choose the eraser tool. All right, guys, so we have the eraser tool, but we want to adjust it. Now, there's two ways you can adjust your eraser tool. If you look at your bracket keys, which are right above the quote mark next to the P key on your keyboard, if you click that, you can use the bracket keys to go larger and smaller. That's a shortcut for it. Or if you go over to the eraser, you can double click on it, and it'll allow you to change it. We want to go ahead and change our size down to a smaller size. The book recommends doing it at a 20, so let's try it at 20 and see what happens. Go ahead and click OK, but you can see that you can also change your roundness or your angle or any of those. So we're going to go ahead and click OK, and we want to erase this to make this look a little bit more like a leaf shape. Notice that we still have the shape selected, so even though we have the eraser tool on, when we erase it, it only affects what we had selected before. So I want to practice this a little bit just to make sure that I'm not going. I think that this size 20 is a little too big for me. I want to double click on this and maybe bring it down. I'd rather work with a smaller brush personally. Oops, I didn't mean to do that with the angle. Let's go back. I want to work with a smaller brush just to see how that turns out. Okay. There we go. That's a little bit better. And I just want to make it a leaf shape. It takes a little bit of practice. Mine's kind of ugly, so I'm just going to play with it a little bit till I get it the way I want it to go. And I want to do it on both sides just to kind of get a nice round leaf shape. There you go. That looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to go ahead and click off of this to look at it. It's a little funky. I could play around with a little bit more if I want to. It kind of bothers me now, but I don't want to take time on the tutorial to play with it. So you guys can mess around with it till you get exactly what you want. Then draw a marquee around it, and you want to do Control G for group, or you could do Object Group. Okay, and that's it for this one. All right, guys, we're at 19 minutes so far, so I want to leave at this point for this tutorial. So far you have learned how to cut a path with scissors. You learned how to cut a path with a knife. We learned how to join a path together, and then we learned how to use the caps lock to make the knife straight instead of being freeform. And you learned how to change the fill in all of these areas. And then you also learned how to use, how to take a path and outline it, and then how to use the eraser tool to fix the shape. So those are the key points for today that you learned. Starting with the tutorial tomorrow, you're going to work with the car, which is on number 6 artboard. and we'll work on creating compound paths and different shapes using the Pathfinder tool, or the shape builder tool, and that's a fun one next. So we'll work on a car and a trailer next. All right, so don't forget to answer your questions on the question sheet, and that's it for